Today, we're gonna have a look at a couple of small things that Acer could have done to this version of the Nitro 50 pre-built gaming system that I bought from Best Buy to make it just a generally better gaming/user experience. But before we get into that, just a quick word from today's video sponsor, which is Raid Shack. Ah, you were worried there for a second, weren't you? Don't worry, they didn't sponsor the video. The video is actually sponsored by my new gaming channel that I started with a friend of mine. So if you want to see the two of us use dwarves to fight aliens on the inside of what I think is a woman's body, maybe, then go subscribe to that channel, linked in the description below. In the first video that I did of this $710 gaming pre-built that I bought from Best Buy, there were a couple of compromises on that system which I thought was unacceptable for the amount that the system cost. So today we're going to address those two and we're going to see how much of a difference it makes just to the general user experience. When it comes to the first thing that we're going to deal with, I feel a little bit like a broken record at this point, so I feel like we can all probably say it together now. It's put an SSD in it. Which is just, it's a $710 system can't not have an SSD in it, in my opinion. And considering the fact that there's also a huge amount of bloatware on that system, it's pretty slow when it comes to just browsing the internet and launching applications and stuff like that on the desktop. When it comes to actually just deleting the bloatware, it's surprisingly persistent. The bloatware on this Acer machine is a little bit like herpes. It kind of just keeps coming back every time you thought you got rid of it. It'll do things like, oh no, uninstallation failed. We don't know what happened, but maybe you should try again. And then you try again and it's a perpetual cycle. So I actually reinstalled Windows on it to show you an example of a fresh install of Windows on a hard drive. So here we have 3 different boot speed tests. The one is just in the stock configuration, the one is with the normal hard drive but with a fresh install of Windows on it, and then the last one is with an SSD that also has a fresh install of Windows on it. And as you can see, it's a lot faster. When it comes to launching applications and stuff as well, it's so much faster with an SSD in it. It kind of feels like a completely different PC. In the stock configuration, it was really sluggish. It felt like a very old, clogged up system, and I guess it's because of all of that herpes. Now, when it comes to the second thing that we're gonna fix today, I'm actually taking a little bit of a different approach, because in the original video, I complained about it not having 16 gigs of RAM. But a lot of people commented in that video that the biggest issue isn't the fact that it doesn't have 16 gigs of RAM, it's the fact that it has one 8 gig stick. So then it doesn't have dual channel memory, which gives you a lot more memory bandwidth. So what I decided to do was, instead of testing 8 versus 16 gig, I'm gonna put 2 4 gig sticks of RAM into the system. I'm gonna use this Patriot Viper 2666 MHz RAM, which is the same speed as the RAM that comes in the stock configuration of the Nitro 50. Just a quick disclaimer before I get into the actual comparison. I was having some real problem with RAM speeds on this system. Now, the actual Patriot kit that I was using is supposed to run at 2666 MHz, but if I looked at Task Manager on the desktop, it was only giving me 2133 MHz, which obviously isn't ideal. And because the BIOS on this system is really terrible, it's very locked down, you can't actually manually change anything, so you're just kind of stuck with that RAM speed. After that, I did some research on the internet, and there was a forum post where somebody was talking about JEDEC verifications that this motherboard actually uses to see how fast it should clock the RAM. Now, the exact profile that it's looking for is called DDR4 2666V, which is basically RAM that runs at 2666 MHz with a cache latency of 19. Now, this all seems very convoluted, and that's kind of the point, because manufacturers of RAM don't really seem to list this information anywhere, because if it runs at 2666 MHz but has a cache latency of 18, it's going to clock it down to either 2400 MHz or 2133 MHz. I tested 4 different kits of RAM from different manufacturers at different speeds and different configurations. 3 of them ran at 2133 MHz, and 1 of them ran at 2400 MHz, and then the stock RAM that it came with ran at 2666 MHz. So basically, upgrading your RAM on this system is a real pain in the butt. And then, on top of all of that, when I was testing one of the kits of RAM, when I switched the PC on, I actually got a puff of blue magic smoke. I had this brief panic because I thought I had just destroyed this pre-built that I bought, but luckily, it only killed the stick of RAM. You can see here on the pins, it actually shorted it out and the stick got on fire. Now, I'm not gonna directly blame the PC for it, but this is my sacrificial kit of RAM, which I've used in many different dodgy PCs, and none of them have destroyed the RAM yet. So yeah, that's a bit dodgy. Now basically the point of this whole long ridiculous disclaimer is A, upgrading RAM is a pain in the butt on this system, and B, the 4x2 gig kit that I'm going to be testing is going to be running at 2133 MHz, where the 1x8 gig kit is going to be running at 2666 MHz. So let's see what that does for the benchmarks. As you can see, even though the 2x4 sticks of RAM were actually running slower than the 1x8, in some of the games you get a little bit more performance. In a couple of them, there was kind of just, it's within the margin of error, and for some weird reason, Fortnite actually performed better on the 1/8 gig stick. Now I ran that test several times in each configuration, and I got the same results each time, so I don't know, I guess it has something to do with how Fortnite interacts with the RAM. There wasn't really a noticeable performance difference between the two different setups. This may be down to the fact that they're not both running at the same speed, but again, unfortunately, we couldn't make that happen for this video. In conclusion, these two changes really wouldn't have cost them that much to do. It didn't give us that much more gaming performance, but the day-to-day usability of the system feels a lot more 2020 and a lot less 2005. It really does make a big difference in the Windows user experience. And then, when it comes to the whole RAM thing, that's just a whole nother pain in the butt. Luckily, Intel isn't that sensitive to RAM speed, but still, that's just, for a PC that's designed around being convenient, that's hella inconvenient. And then not only that, it may just set fire to your RAM. Now, Brian from Yes City did do a video about this system. He had way more problems with his than I had with mine. So I'll have that video linked in the description below so you can see all of the stuff that he had to deal with. So there's a video coming soon where I'm gonna compare it to a more boutique pre-built option. So subscribe if you want to see that video, because that's coming next week. Anyway, with that, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Again, go check out the gaming channel. I'll have it linked in the description below. And until the next video, bye-bye.